It's amazing how so many questions are answered when we bring reincarnation into the picture. So many situations that could not be explained otherwise are brought into the light of reason with the knowledge of reincarnation. On that note, we are pleased to present our next speaker, Julio Carvalho, who will talk about how we know things we never learned. Julio Carvalho first encountered the Spiritist doctrine when he was about 14 years old. Since then, he has become an active participant in the United States Spiritist movement. Julio co-founded the Spiritist Center Divine Light in Newark, New Jersey, which he coordinates with a group of friends. And he has become a prolific speaker, disseminating the Spiritist message not only in the tri-state area, but also in the Union County Jail, where he works as a mental health counselor. Please help me welcoming Julio Carvalho to the stage.
Members of the board, dear speakers, and all of my friends who are here, I am so happy to see us together growing in knowledge and hopefully in moral acts of love towards this philosophy that we love so much. The title of our question, of our topic, is how we know things we never learned. Sometimes I wonder how we forget things that we learned. But before we address this topic, it's important to know, why is it that we forget things? When someone delves into this philosophy, one of the basic questions they ask, if we had previous lives, how come I don't remember who I was? This question in itself, it's a whole seminar, because there are many reasons why we forget who we were. But I'll shortly address just one of the reasons, and that is because of guilt. From the psychological point of view, guilt, it is such a destructive force. When someone becomes aware that they have made a mistake, a gigantic mistake, they literally cease to progress. They stop moving forward. And unfortunately, for some people, the pain is so unbearable that they commit suicide. Working in the jail system for the past 11 years, I have noticed how guilt can be such a destructive force. For a man who found out that his wife was cheating on him and left him, if she's not going to be mine, she would not be anyone else's. Therefore, I will kill her. And they do it. But just a couple of hours inside a 6-by-6 foot cell, they realize they have made the greatest mistake of their lives. One, how can you kill someone you said you previously loved? Second, I love my kids. They have absolutely nothing to do with what she did and what I did. Yet, I have caused them their greatest pain. I have removed their mothers from them. Third, because he will get a 30-year sentence, he realized he also have made his children fatherless as well. All in one act of insanity. How can you deal with this pain? As a result, they literally develop a psychiatric disorder, which science has different labels to give to, yet no real solution. Because a pill cannot remove someone's guilt. There are lesser kinds of guilt. We also participate in a bereavement group. It is a group for those who are left behind. So in a hospice, not only the dying can do it with dignity, but also the family receives the help. So when their loved one dies, there is a meeting, and in this meeting, those who are experiencing the same kind of traumatic pain, they relate to one another the painful memories that they have. And the man usually says this, so pay attention, all married men in the room. For the single ones who one day also get married, the men usually say this. You know, now that she's gone, and I have to do all the work in the house, cleaning, sweeping, mopping, dry cleaning, I had no idea she worked that much. But now that she's gone and I have to do it, it kills my heart that I wasn't grateful to her. So for those who are left behind, they're consumed by guilt for the things they didn't do. Appreciate being thankful. So for those of you who are married, you still have time. Say it today. Say it tonight. Some of you will say, well, she already knows I'm thankful. But women, don't you like to hear that he's thankful? Yes or no? I'm giving you a very good reason to complain, so do it right. Do you like to hear him saying, thank you, sweetheart? That was such a weak yes. They are not going to do it. So reincarnation, it's an opportunity for us to have the illusion that we are beginning again without beginning anything. Because we are the same individual, just using another biological machine, a physical vehicle. And as a result, we reincarnate with the same individuals from our past existences to make amends to correct our mistakes, to love them, since we're so ungrateful. And at moments consumed by our own selfishness, we have hurt them so much. So here we are now with those same individuals. That explains the amount of love that you have for your mother-in-law. That's a blessed individual in your life helping you evolve. At least that's my case, because she really helps me exercise lots of patience. For those of you who heard the interview that we did for our Orlando radio station, I got home 11:30. I told Sonia, that's my mother-in-law, I hope she's watching this. I'm stating publicly, Sonia, I'm going to put my dogs on the backyard because I don't have a shot in editing this. This is live radio. I have no idea who this guy is. He's going to bombard me with questions. And I cannot hear these dogs barking because my dogs, they're very aware whenever I am recording a video. That's when they start barking. They're the helpers of my spiritual obsessors. They do a great job. I put the dogs outside. Here I am. This man is asking me all these different questions. He's trying to push me into the realm of religious belief about reincarnation. It has religious consequences, but I am trying to speak some logic and sense through a scientific argument. And the woman, the blessed woman, my mother-in-law, she allows the dogs to come in. 10 minutes into the interview, they're barking out of their lungs. And I'm running away to a different part of the room, carrying the laptop with me and the phone, so I could continue arguing with this man and yet hearing my two dogs barking. Embrace your mother-in-law, because this is the last time I want to come back with Sonia, you know. Forgetfulness is a blessing. And even through Spiritist philosophy, if someone went for medical training to do past therapy lives, it's not recommended for mere curiosity. It's recommended when there is unfinished business, a traumatic subconscious event that disturbs us so much that it hampers us from living a normal life. Guilt destroys our progress, and it doesn't resolve anything. The reason why we have guilt, it is to warn us. You've done first, you've done this before, remember how much it harmed you, it hurt you, so don't do it again. That is the purpose of guilt. It's a message from our inner psyche telling us, you have done this again, don't do it over. Otherwise, you will keep re-experiencing the pain, but more intense. Because the more aware we become of who we are, the more intelligence we have, the more pain we experience. Because it leads us to have more responsibility. This is why when we reincarnate, all the experiences we have lived, it is stored, are stored in our subconscious mind. Not to be confused with unconsciousness. Two different things. Our subconscious mind stores all the information, all the knowledge that we have. And there are some instances in which this subconscious knowledge comes to our consciousness without our awareness. And this is the reason we know things we never learned. We never learned them in our current physical experience, but we have learned them in previous reincarnations. And now that we need to continue our growth, some of this knowledge is blocked from our awareness. If someone was very intellectual in a past reincarnation and they use their intellect to destroy lives, their intellect will be blocked by their current brain in order for them to work in a different realm of their psyche, of their morality. We need to develop ourselves not only intellectually, but more importantly, morally. And when we have used our intellect for wrongdoing, it is blocked from us. But nonetheless, there are some rare instances in which this information comes to our awareness without knowing the details. Take, for instance, the case of this young man, Australian young man. His name is McMahon of Melbourne. He went through a car accident and spent 7 days in a coma. After he woke up from the coma, he spoke fluent, without any accent, Chinese Mandarin. This is not my belief system. This is documented data. There are many videos about this individual. He became so famous because it's regular to see an Asian man who knows how to speak English. But seeing a white man, Australian man, speaking fluent Chinese Mandarin, it is so different that he was invited for a TV show. He became a pop star in China. And the most amazing thing is that temporarily he forgot how to speak English. Not only he spoke Chinese Mandarin, but he gave a note to the nurse that he missed his parents, but he would make sure that he will get well, all in Chinese Mandarin. Now, when I look at Chinese Mandarin letters, they look drawings to me. But this man woke up from his coma able to do that. How can you explain this from the scientific point of view? Impossible. Scientists, they limit themselves just to give a diagnosis, which is foreign accent syndrome. Well, that doesn't explain anything. You're just letting me know a fancy way of saying what it is. We respect very much science because science is the way to the future through knowledge. but science has its limitations because the scientific community still limits themselves just to consider matter as the source of knowledge. So for those that attempt to explain this sort of situation, they will go on to say that we have neural networks in our brain. But after the accident, the neuron network rewired itself in a different position. And the individual now can speak Mandarin. Does that make any sense, even from the scientific point of view? If you didn't have the knowledge before, how could you speak it? There is another young man. His name is Ruben Nesma. He is a Georgian football player. And after a head concussion in a game, he woke up speaking fluent Spanish. Also forgot his English. Not only these individuals are able to communicate in a foreign language, but they are able to write it as well. Now, for those of you who speak a second, a third, or a fourth language, you know how much work it takes to learn a language. Even if you know it, becoming fluent at it, it requires practice and years of speaking that language. But these individuals are able to speak another language from an accident. And speaking of football, since I'm here in Florida, there were these two guys who started reading about reincarnation and also about communications of spirits, and they love football. They love football when Dan Marino actually made a name for himself with Florida football, because now they are forgotten, the Dolphins. I apologize for the football fans. And they say to themselves, you know what, we watch football so much, we know everything about football, we watch all the games, we know about the draft, but this reincarnation thing tells us that we're going to come back. I don't care about coming back. I care about the spiritual world. So let's do this. If you die first, you come through one of these mediums, and you let me know if there's football in the spiritual world. Because if there is no football in the spiritual world, to me, I'd rather stay here and not reincarnate whatsoever. And after an accident, one of the friends died. So he anxiously waiting for a communication, and after 5 years, his friend from the spiritual world came through a medium and said, are you ready for this? I have two answers for you. Bad news, good news. Which one you want first? Well, obviously I want the good news. Well, there's plenty of football in the spiritual world. We love it. We watch it every day, and we can't even play it. Well, then what can be the bad news now? You are scheduled for tomorrow's game. A third individual, and this is happening more often than ever. Ellen DeGeneres, she brings almost once every month a kid that simply surprises the entire world by his ability either to play the piano, the saxophone, sing, but at the age of 4, this little boy, Tan Tan, that's my best pronunciation of Chinese Mandarin, Tan Tan, 4 years old, he came to the show and he played the bumblebee. Now, it's very difficult. It takes so much virtuosity to play that song. He's 4 years old. He could barely speak. He just went to a friend's party. He saw the piano and he started playing. How could that be? There are many mathematicians, 4 or 5 years old, doing superb calculations. Kids who can speak different languages than the parents, the grandparents, have no ascendancy in teaching them those skills. Where they came from? Well, it's all in their subconscious mind. And it comes to their awareness without knowing the details of what they have learned. But one of the most amazing individuals, it's a 13-year-old boy named Joey Alexander, self-taught jazz pianist. He is so amazing that he has been nominated by the age of 13 years old 3 times to the Grammys. And when you hear other musicians trying to explain his virtuosity, they a lot of them would say there is no other explanation but reincarnation. They're saying a sarcastic way, yet how can you explain how this Indonesian kid knows so much about this music that was born here in the 1920s, jazz? Well, they remember that they know how to play. They don't remember the details of how they learned. And the kid, Joey Alexander, has such a sense of humbleness. He says, I know people call me genius. I know they call me prodigy, but I just like to be known as a jazz pianist. It's who I am. I just love playing the music. How can you explain this? Not even through genetics. Because if you try to combine the genes from both parents, grandparents, great-great-parents, how could there be a mix for this child prodigy to be born? So reincarnation explains that we don't remember things because it's unsafe for us to know these details. We could have been enemies to our relatives, but yet we're here together trying to correct our mistakes towards them. But everything that is necessary for us to grow, we know. Human development has a challenge. And the challenge is, it's not only to explain how these kids know these things, but how all of us learn language to begin with. It's one of the greatest questions in human development. How do we learn a language? If you have a child, by 3 years old, that child can speak in complete sentences, use words they never used in past or future tenses. How could that be? They don't know how to answer that. Always remind you that if you don't remember who you are, that's because it's very useful for you to not know the details. The essential things we do know. Like our friend Vanessa said, study your instincts, and your instincts will let you know where you have made your mistakes and where there's progress needed. But the topic of guilt is so interesting that it has been discussed by many spiritists, including Amalia Domingo Soler. Vanessa mentioned her here, and she mentions in one of her books that the Italian journals, they were amazed by the story of this young man who did a gigantic sacrifice for his girlfriend. For the longest, he proposed her in marriage, and she kept saying, no, I'm not going to marry you. I'm not going to marry you. And he insisted for 3 years. And then he said, okay, I'll give up. I'm not going to propose to you anymore, but you must explain to me why you don't want to be married with me. And she said, well, it's because I am blind. And I'm sure eventually you will leave me because of that. Is that the only reason? That's it. That's the only reason. So on the following day, this young man, he woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and he stared at the sun until noon. On the second day, he did the same thing. Woke up very early and stared at the sun until noon. In the third day, he was completely blind. There are many romances in which, out of love, someone commits a crime, do something in desperation. But this man took a very slow manner of achieving his deed, which surprised everyone. How you are able to make this kind of sacrifice for someone who you love. So Amalia Domingo Soler consulted her spiritual guide to explain her what happened in this particular story. And the spiritual guide explains that in a past reincarnation, they were about to get married. The same individual, he went out on a business trip, and she went out with her mother to get her wedding dress. And it was raining really hard, and there was a lightning strike, and the lightning made her blind. When he came back from his business trip and he found out that she was blind, he sent her a letter saying, I couldn't marry with you because you're blind. A couple of months later, she died out of love, and he was so consumed with guilt that he resorted to depression until he died. This is the reason, without remembering the detail, he came back with the same woman in the next reincarnation and fixed what he did without the guilt. The guilt was in his subconscious mind, telling him that to be with her, it's the right thing to do. But the spiritual guide go on to explain that beyond that reincarnation, this same lady in a past reincarnation, she was a slave owner. And whenever a slave escaped, she blinded them with fire to teach the other slaves never to run away again. She was so mean that she even blinded the birds so they could sing around her all the time. So this lady will come back in many physical existences with eye problems to repair the mistakes that she has done. How we know things we never learned? We're here on this planet for many years. Paleontologists, they stated that our Neolithic age started about 20,000 years ago. How many reincarnations we had since then? One, approximately every 100 years. Just taking that into consideration, imagine how many reincarnations you had. So all the information that you know is stored in your subconscious mind. And you could tap into that for your own benefit to progress, not out of mere curiosity. And talking about prodigy, one of the most prodigious individuals in history was a young man by the name of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. By the age of 4, he played his full piano concerto. By the age of 8, he had composed an entire orchestra. He died when he was 36 years of age, and he composed more than 600 songs. How could this be? Well, only reincarnation can explain. His virtuosity came not because he was gifted by nature, but rather the individual Mozart had many reincarnations in which he was a musician and he developed his talent. So today we like to combine the best in music through Mozart by the hands of Edward Christie and the best in poetry from a man named Castro Alves. By the age of 24, Castro Alves was publishing books to abolish slavery. And he wrote a poem from the afterlife through the hands of Chico Xavier, very speedy way, combining complicated rhymes to synthesize all this knowledge, all this information that we're trying to give to you in a day. Life is full of mysteries encompassed of laws of beauty, which compels us to evolve. From God we emanate, multiple forms we reincarnate, longing for perfection and love. In humanity we seek the truth from many myths, yearning for peace and evolution. We cause in our path multiple lives and deaths, victims of our own disillusion. From the eternal struggle, building ourselves from the rubble, we learn ways to overcome. Despite the pain and misery, nevertheless, we grow ceaselessly from darkness to dawn. From the rain top, a plant reaches the top. Triumphant at last, the root appears to be gloom, but manure is converted to perfume, transmutation at its best. The plant will be crowned with flowers all around, birds opera on their arrival. But flowers too shall pass, their martyrdom is a bless for the ground's revival. From nature, we are taught, work hard, that's the law. All life is a movement. Sculpting through sacrifices, we'll carve blocks of vices. Inside a stone lies a monument. Lessons from suffering and pain, change will always ring. Even narrows, tyrants without seas. Under the law of reincarnation, through many trials and expiations, they too will be messengers of peace. Let no one be idle. Today's angel was yesterday's Adam. Perfection is everyone's destiny. Life's purpose, splendid. God's love, transcendent. Our school, universe's eternity. on earth from time to time. Sublime beacons of light dissipates the shadows away. Their presence are felt forever in us they dwell, transforming night into day. Never in history a sacrifice such as the one portrayed by Christ transpire for the sake of truth. From the cross the message is heard, forgive all, always serve, your pain I will soothe. It's Socrates and the hemlock. It's Caesar's war being fought, inflaming oppression and tyranny. It's Celine in his heart, the imperialism of Bonaparte, spreading domination and cruelty. It's Dr. King's I Have a Dream, Lincoln's speeches never seen, the incarnation of renovators. It's the embodiment of humility. From the charitable Francis of Assisi, the gospel resuscitator. Blessed be the teachers who illuminate the seekers, inspiring virtues and light. Bliss is yours to conquer, although perfection is yonder, your progress is bright. In the entire universe, divine heavenly verses decree, march on, a celestial love awaits. Have hope, have faith towards the infinite to come. Thank you, God, for the blessing of speaking, and to you all, thank you for listening.